President, I want to follow up on what the Majority Whip has been talking about. Clearly, the country is and should be concerned by the President's unilateral executive action on immigration. He announced this action November the 20th of last year. The Majority Whip has already gone down that list of a number of our colleagues on the other side who said this is the wrong way to do this. The House happens to agree. In fact, the House of Representatives has passed legislation that agrees that this is the wrong way to do it and try to come up with a remedy. Frankly, Mr. President, if there's a better remedy, you're not going to find that better remedy if you don't have a debate. You're not going to find that better remedy if you don't come to the floor and say, here's how we think that bill should be changed. This clearly, the action taken last November by the President was clearly an executive overreach. It was an affront, and I believe, to the rule of law, and it was an affront to the Constitution. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution states that the President, quote, shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That's the end of the quote right out of the Constitution, but it couldn't be clearer. She'll take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That's why we call the President the executive. The President's job is not to make the law. The President's job is not to rule as a court would on the law. The President's job is to execute the law. The question here is, does the law matter or not? The question here is, what do we do when the House of Representatives has passed a spending bill that would allow the funding for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security for the rest of the fiscal year between now and September the 30th. Now, their bill does try to stop President Obama's executive amnesty plan. Many people, it appears, if you believe what you read that people have said, a substantial majority of the Senate agrees that the President shouldn't have done what he did. What's our obligation to try to undo that? The House has done their part by sending a bill over that does that. The President himself said 22 times that he didn't have the authority to do what he eventually did. I guess this is one case where I agree with the President 22 times. So if anybody's thinking I don't agree with the President, here's 22 times I agree with the President. The 22 times he said he can't do or couldn't do what he eventually decided to do. And what was that? The President said he can't unilaterally change the country's immigration laws. He didn't have that authority. The 22 times he said he didn't have that authority. He didn't have that authority on November the 20th, 2014, when he took actions that clearly were designed not to enforce the law, and he doesn't have that authority now. So the House sent a bill over that tries to clarify that the President doesn't have that authority, that the legislative branch of the federal government is the House of Representatives and the Senate of the United States. It's not whoever gets to act last. You know, occasionally the President will say, I'm going to take executive action if the Congress doesn't do its job. Well, the key point there is it's the job of the Congress to pass laws, not the job of the President. If the President wants to repeal the law, if the President wants to change the law, nobody is in a better position than the President of the United States to encourage the Congress and the country to do that. But that doesn't mean the President has that default option of if the Congress doesn't act by some certain date, I'll just do it myself. That is not in the Constitution. The President's not going to find it there. I continue to believe that the House passed Department of Homeland Security funding bill is the way to send a message to the President that he can't act unilaterally, that there is a constitutional way to do this. I've not given up on winning over 6 Democrats in the Senate that clearly we'd need. Everybody understands the importance of 60 votes in the Senate, and there are 54 Republicans, not 60, but there are more than 6 Democrats who've said they didn't agree with what the President did. I think in all cases they say we agree with the funding levels, or we'd vote for the funding levels for the Department of Homeland Security. Seems to me those two things come together pretty nicely. You get a chance by debating this bill to undo what the president did and to fund the Department of Homeland Security. There are at least 6 Democrats who said that those are 2 different things that they are for. Well, this is a case where we get to do that. We need to do this by passing the House measure that ensures spending at an important time with critical needs of Homeland Security, but it also would stop the president's illegal amnesty. We should not let that stand. You don't know where these legislative fights wind up until you have them. Maybe that's why no Democrat yesterday was willing to have this debate, because maybe they don't know what happens if really the attention is called to the past positions they've had or the need to fund the Department of Homeland Security. But you don't know how these legislative battles work out if you don't have them. I think we need to have this one. Leader McConnell said our first choice is to try to pass the House bill. Mr. President, if the law shouldn't be followed, advocate that it be repealed. Advocate that it be changed. Don't advocate that it be ignored. The ignore clause of the Constitution doesn't exist. There is no ability of the executive to do that. The United States is a nation founded on rule of law. Every trade agreement we enter into, all our relationships with other countries, people who come here, we talk about this is a country where you can look at the law and rely, no matter what your status is, on the law itself. The president is to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. Yet President Obama repeatedly has found ways to circumvent the Congress by picking and choosing which laws he wants to enforce. Or in the case of the overwhelmingly complicated health care law, picking and choosing what dates that the law is to be complied with, even though the law often has very clear other dates. The president, well, I think there's a better date. This is a bill the president was a major advocate of. He had a chance to put the dates in there and didn't. I recently reintroduced, Madam President, as the senator from Iowa has taken the chair, I recently reintroduced the Enforce the Law Act to ensure that the president can't just continue to blatantly not do what the law says has to be done. This is a bill I introduced in the last Congress where it passed the House with a bipartisan vote, but in the last Congress we weren't allowed to vote on it. Apparently, there are a number of my colleagues here who think that not only are we no longer allowed to vote on bills, now it's even a bad idea if we debate the bill. That's what the vote was yesterday. Let's debate the bill. This wasn't approving anything except let's debate the bill. That's what we should be moving forward now so we could fund this part of the government that the president complicated the funding for with his action last November. The Enforce the Law Act permits the Congress, if the Congress believes that the president isn't enforcing the law, to go to court, not to wait months and years for an aggrieved citizen to have to go to court with their own money and say, we don't believe the government has the authority to do this, but the Congress could go to court and go to court early and let that judge decide if the law is being enforced as written or not. The Enforce the Law Act would reestablish the proper limits of the executive branch. It would restore checks and balances. It would also provide a defender of citizens who, in their capacity, don't have to fight the government by themselves if the Congress itself believes that the president has taken authority that he doesn't have or is enforcing the law in a way that wasn't intended. I think we have to stand up for the rule of law. I've joined in a court case supporting the state of Texas, who is suing the administration over what they believe is all kinds of added expenses put on them by the president's power grab in deciding on his own which immigration laws will be enforced and which shouldn't. Senator Cornyn, Senator Cruz, and I were signatories to this brief filed in December. 24 House members joined us, including the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, saying we agree with these states that many responsibilities have been placed on them because the President of the United States chose not to enforce the law as written. 26 states have now joined on to that lawsuit filed by the state of Texas, and I look forward to the conclusion of that suit, because I think the judge is likely to decide that no, there isn't the selectivity of which laws you enforce that the President has applied here, and there are great costs created for states as a result of that. Every senator in this chamber, Madam President, has a constitutional obligation to curb a unilateral executive overreach. We have a chance to do that with the bill that could be before us. We have a chance to do that with the bill that the House has sent over. This whole issue goes to the very heart of the system of checks and balances in our country, and reiterates the importance of the Constitution, following the Constitution, adhering to the rule of law. I'd like to see us have a chance to do that as this Department of Homeland Security funding bill should, and eventually I'm confident will, come to the floor, and I would yield.